it's Erica Henry with Erica Henry Colors, and I'm so excited to be bringing you this video because I'm celebrating 1,000 subscribers today. We're going to be doing a tutorial on how to create this texture, and it's really awesome because we're only going to be using 2 markers and 2 color pencils, and that's all we need to create this. So it's going to be lots of fun, and here are the markers that we're going to be using. I'll go closer into detail with those in a bit, but I did want to say that I got this idea from Mark Creeley. I love watching his channel. If you don't subscribe to him, please go subscribe. I wanted to emulate what he did for this. So the first marker we have is Goldenrod. This is a Prismacolor brush marker that I'm going to be using. The second marker is a Copic, or Copic, depending on how you say it. It's an E15. Then we're going to be using a Prismacolor white colored pencil, which is PC938. And then we also have a Prismacolor 90% cool gray as well. So to start off, I went ahead and created my little shape that I wanted to do, and I'm just going to go in horizontal streaks with the goldenrod here. And we're going to speed this up here in just a second, but we're just going to do these horizontal marks just like this, and we're going to overlap each one slightly, and that's going to help go ahead and start our wood texture. And I am using the brush side, not the nib side. I tend to like the brush side. You can use either one, but I tend to like the brush. So here you can see that I'm actually kind of going over the lines that I've already did, creating multiple layers, and then that's going to actually create a different color because there's going to be more saturation there, so it's actually going to start creating those horizontal wood texture that you see whenever you look at a piece of sliced wood. Those grains are very important to create a realistic wooden sign, and so that's why we do the overlapping. And by overlapping, it actually uses one marker to create multiple depths there. So we're just going to keep going in this horizontal motion. If you miss some places, don't worry, we're going to go back and fix that. Just keep moving. You also don't want to do completely straight horizontal. We want to vary it up a little bit. Just like whenever you see something in nature, it's not 100% perfectly straight. A lot of it is very closely to being straight, but you want to actually make sure that you have a few bumps and ripples in there as well. It'll make for a more interesting and more realistic piece. So we're just going to continue this along. We're going to zoom in a little bit closer so you can see what happens whenever I overlap. You can just start to see where those grains look like they have some depth to them. Even though I'm just using one marker, it has more depth. Now, whenever you're doing anything realistic, I always suggest to look at reference photos. Look at lots of different types of wood, lots of different wood signs, and see what's out there. And like I said before, this is a recreation of a video that Mark Creeley did. I also have his book, The Realism Challenge. I'm pretty sure that's the name of it. I've got to double check, but I will put that information in the description below. If you don't own it, go buy it. It's amazing. I love it. It really pushes you as an artist to create realistic drawings, and I love how simple and straightforward his book is. This is not sponsored. Mark Creeley doesn't even know who I am, I'm sure, but I just love his work and want to give him some recognition because he's a big inspiration for me. So we're going to go ahead and speed this up really quick and finish these horizontal strokes with the goldenrod, and then we'll be back. Alright, so this is sped up now, and I'm actually finishing this up. Now I'm going to go back and fill in all of these little white spaces and also go over some other areas slightly more, just to even give even more of a realistic grainy texture here, because it's going to create an even darker line. And I'm not really worried about making sure it's completely horizontal. I'm also not even worrying about bringing it all the way across. Just kind of haphazardly, in my own fashion, making some grains to the wood here. Still using my goldenrod, so still on the very first marker. Now I'm going around the edges of the wood just to create some more depth. I'm also using a flicking motion off of the side, that way it kind of blends into the middle there. But I definitely want to create that extra depth. So I'm going over these areas again, especially on the outside, because it's going to make it really pop. On the other side, I come through and do the flicking motions as well, and that just helps kind of blend everything in together. It's bolder on the side towards the wood, and then blending in with the rest of it in the middle there. So now it's time for our Copic marker. And I'm coming back through. I'm going to work on the edges again because this is a different color. This again is the E15 or E15, however you look at it. And I'm coming through and creating some more depth on those sides there. Pausing to take a look at it, and then I'm going to come over to the top, and I'm also using the brush side of this marker as well. Like I said before, I prefer the brush nib, not the regular bullet nib. So I'm zooming in here a little bit so you can just kind of see what I'm doing. Nothing fancy, just creating some more depth. And my pencil lines actually show through a little bit on this. I'm not too worried about it because it just kind of, to me, helps make it more realistic because it makes it a little bit darker. So we're just going to finish the contour of this object up here. And just, working as fast or as slow as I feel. Now when I'm creating a line, I like to try to turn the paper facing me. That way I'm moving vertically down towards me. It just helps me have a little bit more control. It's just a personal preference. It's not, something that you absolutely have to do. It's just my personal preference. So finishing up, now as I'm doing the contour, I'm trying to keep a fairly consistent stroke because it is the edge. So I just kind of try to keep a consistent stroke there. So now I'm going to start those flicking motions again from the edges and just going all the way around just to create some more grain. This is a different color, so it's going to create even more contrast and help make those grains appear even more realistic. I really like the goldenrod and the E15 or E15 together. The colors really blend well and they just go well together. So it is okay to mix and match your markers. It's okay to mix and match your colored pencils or any other art medium that you have. Just use whatever you have on hand. It doesn't have to be these two particular markers or these two particular colored pencils. Though I do suggest, if you work in colored pencil, to keep lots of white colored pencils on hand because they are used so much. I use them almost 99% of the time for blending my colored pencils together. Is my favorite way to blend is either with a white or cream. White is preferred for me. It's just a personal preference. The only time that I don't really use a white or a cream to blend is if I'm using a dark color and I want it to stay dark, just because it just creates more work on me if I'm lightening it up. So again, I'm just coming through here with the E15 or E15, however you want to say it. And I'm just making some random grain marks. They don't go all the way across, some all the time. Some go across, some don't. Some are more straight, some are more crooked. just, look at your reference photos and get an idea for what kind of wood that you want to create, and then, create the style that you want. Even mix a couple of reference photos together. It's art. Who cares? Do whatever makes you happy. So I'm coming to the edge, doing those flicking motions again, just kind of giving it some more depth. And so here is my finished product here with the markers just about. There's a couple of little spaces that I want to clear up a bit and just make them stand out a little bit more. So just, take a step back, look at it, and just see if there's anything that you think that you need to add to it. Alright, so now I'm going to come through with my pencil and start creating the YouTube portion of my piece of wood here. And I really liked how Mark did one with the two different directions that the wood carving is going. One is carved in and one is sticking out. So I wanted to stick with that same sort of look, because like I said, I really wanted to emulate what he did and, to give it a try to myself. So that's what I'm doing. So I just go through and I create some block lettering, and then I'm also going to do the square part of the YouTube, and I'm going to fast forward for this. I'm going to fast forward through this for now, and so you can just kind of see what I did but not have to painstakingly watch me do it, since I'm not doing anything, extraordinary. So now I'm going to come through with my Copic E15 and start tracing over where I want the carvings to be. And then, as I'm doing this, I'm keeping in mind my direction that my shadows need to be and where my light source is going to be. So I'm just going to trace all the outlines. I'm also going to come through and color in the portions that are going to be sunk down into the wood. So the portions that are actually carved out using the E15 or E15. Alright, so in here my U is going to be down and my tube is going to be up, but I'm going to have the carved rectangle around it. So keep that in mind. And I'm actually going to go through and do a second coat with the E15 just to give it even more depth to show that it's really been carved out of there. And now I'm going to come through with my 90% cool gray, and I'm just going to continue to make this much darker. I'm keeping in mind my light source and where that's going to be coming from. But as I'm coloring this, I am really keeping a very loose hand. My color pencil is almost horizontal completely as I'm doing this, just a very loose hand, light strokes, because light layers with color pencil make all the difference in the world. You really want to build upon those layers and build upon those layers whenever you're working with color pencil. So I'm just going through in all of these places where I just came with my marker, and I'm just really emphasizing those shadows, really making it pop. And now I'm just going to speed this up for you. Now, as I'm working the color pencil, you will see me come back through with the E15 or E15 and just kind of going back over and making a real deep, dark, rich color. So I do alternate between the color pencil and the marker, just altering those layers just to give it a lot of depth. So now I'm coming through with my colored pencil, my gray colored pencil, and I'm going to outline the entire piece. And because my light source is coming from the top left, I'm actually going to really darken it more on the bottom right hand side of my piece, which you'll see here shortly. Now in this piece, my light source is actually coming from the top left and going towards the right. So with that in mind, I'm coming back through with my color pencil and really accenting along the parts that are sticking up. Really casting a shadow, pushing a little bit harder than I did with the carved in spots where I was doing the larger layers, and creating a nice crisp line to really make it stand out and to cast that shadow, that nice harsh shadow where it would actually fall if the light source was real. So I'm not going over all of the sides because it's not going to cast a shadow on the left side of each letter. It's going to cast it on the right side because my light source is coming from the left. So I definitely have to keep that in mind whenever doing highlights and shadows. Whenever you're trying to do a realistic piece, it makes all the difference in the world. Now when it comes to the rectangle here that is all carved out, I'm actually making sure to put my darkest line on the left side here versus the right side, because the shadow actually is going to be more emphasized there because my light source is actually on the left. But I am going to go around this entire thing and put a nice shadow line because it is nice and carved into the piece, but I am focusing on that left hand side for the darkest area of my shadow. And the same thing we're going to do right here, because this part is actually carved in, the U in YouTube is carved in. We're going to add a shadow around the entire thing, but we're going to emphasize the shadow on the left hand side. So it's the opposite of what we did earlier with the tube part, because the tube part sticks out. We are making that piece want to come up, and the U we're wanting to make go down. So we are going to highlight, or I'm sorry, we're going to put a shadow around the whole thing, but emphasize the left hand side. So now I'm coming through and really marking that left hand side, making it stand out. So just keep in mind where the light source will be coming from the whole time when you're trying to work on a realistic piece. So this piece is looking really good so far, but it's not only the grains that make the wood, it's also all those little knots and bumps and all of that. So make sure to look at your reference photos and take a look at all of those little knots and bumps that happen in there. And I'm actually coming through with my warm gray, and I'm really working on getting some knots put in just to make it more realistic. And I'm actually going over the entire piece here. I'm not shying away from coloring over the U in YouTube at all, because the knot will go all the way through the wood in my reference photos. So that's why I'm coming through and covering that. Now, another thing that I've really noticed with wood is that when you have those knots, towards the beginning of them, it is a lot closer together, and then as the knot grows away, they seem to spread out a bit more. Now, when I was studying my reference photos, I noticed that towards the pieces on the right, like where it goes out, it's not really very smooth. It's kind of feathered out looking. So I'm just coming through and recreating that little feathered, jagged look here. I'm going to speed this up for you, but I'm just going to continue making all these little knots in the wood just to make it look more real, more believable. But we're going to speed it up because this is a very long video and I know that you guys want to get to the end. So since this is a solid piece of wood that we're creating here, we're going to come through and start layering a shadow with our 90% cool gray colored pencil. And you probably can't even see it on camera because I'm starting with a very, very light layer, and we're just going to build and build and build, and eventually it will make this really stick out. So I'm really concentrating on keeping the shadow on the bottom right hand side, and as we do this, the closer it is to the wood, the darker it's going to be, and then it's going to kind of fade out as it gets farther from the wood. So just remember, keep doing the light layers and just building and building, and eventually you will start to see a very realistic shadow starting to form. Now, my light source again is on the top right, or I'm sorry, top left, shining right. So that is why I chose to do the shadow on this side, because that's where it would hit in real life. Now, as you can see, since I have all these layers going, I'm really coming through and laying down some colored pencil on this side. That way it creates this really awesome natural looking shadow. We're extending it out. And we're going to come through with the white colored pencil and start blending it out and really making it blend together and not so harsh, all of those good things. That's one of the reasons I love using a white colored pencil, is because it blends so well and makes it all flow together. We're getting very close to being finished with this piece, but we do have to come through and add those highlights, because in real life things have highlights and shadows. So anywhere that my light would hit, so on the right hand side of the line we created on the left hand side of the piece, there's going to be a nice highlight there, so we're coming through with our white colored pencil there. On the right side of the U in YouTube, there's going to be the highlights there, because that's where my light would be hitting. So I'm coming through and putting a nice little highlight on each of those. You could use a color pencil, you could use white gouache, a white gel pen, you know, whatever you have on hand to create highlights, you can. And again, I'm just so excited to have reached over 1,000 followers and subscribers. I never believed that that would have happened whenever I started my channel, but it really makes my day. So thank y'all so much for staying with me and enjoying my tutorials, and all of your comments and all of your shares and subscribes. It really means the world to me. So this piece is almost finished, but I just wanted to take a moment to, express my gratitude. So I'm coming through with a light hand here and really just adding more of a highlight along the left hand side, because I wanted my wood to be quite shiny. So that just gives the effect a little bit more, really kind of spreading out those highlights, not doing them as deep as I did whenever my colored pencil was, vertical, but it just kind of gives that illusion of it being shiny. So here's our finished piece. I hope you enjoyed it. Can't wait to see yours. Thank you so much for watching. You can click to check out another video. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on the newest videos that come out. Please remember to comment below on what you'd like to see next. I want to hear from you, because you guys help guide me on where to go.